So everybody has to please agree to this recording. All right, everybody, welcome to the BSA's first webinar on the hot topic of negotiation. Today, you're here with myself, Nikon, and Alex. So before we introduce ourselves, we're just going to tell you a little bit about what to expect today. Today is about you, interestingly, right? Like, oh, I'm here to learn about negotiation, but today's about you. So we're going to do something called collaborative learning, meaning that we're going to be collaborative learning and teaching, meaning that we're going to be teaching each other and learning from each other. And it's going to be in the style of question and answers. It's going to be sharing insights. And those are the things that are going to help us learn the most from today. So any question you have, I guarantee it, somebody's really happy you asked that question. Anything you share, I bet you somebody's really happy you shared that because it was for them. And the way it's going to work today is me and Alex are going to talk a bit about what we think about negotiation and the things we've learned in our own journeys. And then we're going to pass it over to you for Q&A. You can even bring your own cases like, hey, I'm working on this. I'm having a hard time negotiating this. Can you help me? And we'll coach you on the spot, me and Alex, and we'll go from there. So first, I think we'd introduce ourselves. So Alex, you want to go first?
Sure. And thanks, Nikan, as well, finding the time here. So, hi everybody. I'm Alex. I'm Danish and Thai. I've used to live in London, in Manila, and Copenhagen, now Bangkok. My background is, usually say I've been on both sides of the table. I think I've been at multiple tables and multiple sides. I've been a management consultant, a corporate venture builder, a entrepreneur, and now investor. So I've tried, dealing with bureaucracy when it comes to internal negotiations with, how power dynamics are. I've tried raising capital, negotiating with investors and also co-founders on a conflict level. And in that particular space where I was an entrepreneur, we dealt with private equity. So we did a lot of negotiation on funding mechanisms, debt structures, all kinds of strange areas that I'm actually not very experienced in. So I learned a lot about how you get very confident about speaking about a subject matter that you may not, be a veteran in, but that was the domain of my startup. And here lately, I've opened a VC based here in Bangkok. We focus on early stage startups, but obviously we negotiate a lot, both with our entrepreneurs when it is that we have invested, and of course also on the deal matters as when we invest. So I have had kind of a crash course in negotiation, not from a theoretical point of view, but very much in practice. And I look forward to sharing with you a lot, perhaps more of the things that I don't think you should do when you negotiate, rather than the things that you should do when you negotiate. So I hope to share some of my shortcomings as well, so you can gain from my suffering and don't have to suffer yourself. So that's a little bit about me. We can dive into the details later, but Nikon, I'll let you run with it.
Cool. All right, my name is Nikon. I serve on the Bangkok Startup Association board along with Alex Avant. I'm on the partnership committee, and Alex does events. I built the largest provider of Taekwondo activities for international schools in the country. I am an adjunct professor. I teach on the executive education faculty of the Asian Institute of Hospitality Management and Satsen School of Management, both incredible schools, highly recommended, both of them. And my experience is very similar to Alex's. I've learned negotiation the hard way, mostly by doing it the wrong way, and learning by doing. And we have lots of great stories for you to share. And really, for me, that's the best way, because like learning negotiation is really just sharing stories and insights, and we'll go from there. And before we kick off, I'd like for you to raise your digital hand and just tell us like what brought you here, what inspired you to be here. And if you don't want to share, you can type it into the chat. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple minutes and just share like why are you here? What inspired you to come today? You could have been doing anything else, but decided to give us an hour of your time. Or if you want to share, raise your little digital hand and we'll go from there. All right, Furzy, you're up.
Hey, long time caller, first time, what is it? Long time listener, first time caller. I'm now in a new part of my career where I actually have to negotiate salary and negotiate payment for reoccurring situations. And my prior life, I'm a teacher, so there's no salary choice. You just get what you get. And so I'd like to know how to do that.
Cool. Thanks, Rosie. That's something I definitely know
Yeah, me
how
too.
feels.
I'm going to read from the chat, Alex. So if anybody else wants to go next, just raise your hand. So Mario said, learn how to speak when negotiating because we negotiate every day. Luis said, eager to learn from everyone's experience when it comes to negotiation so that I don't repeat the same mistakes. Lots of mistakes today. Crucial skill. Who's that guy? Crucial skill for all aspects of life. Always want to be refining and getting better at it. David said, thought it was a good opportunity for a refresher because my negotiating skills are getting rusty. Samantha said, thank you, Nikon and Alex, for hosting. I joined to learn more about how to facilitate a webinar using Zoom because I usually work on MS Teams. All right. Anybody else? Oh, Kristen, you're up. Hey, Kristen.
Hello. Yeah, thank you for hosting this event. I got curious about. So I have a startup, and I learned a little bit about negotiation in university back then. But it got me when you introduced co-founder conflict management, navigating disagreements in aligned vision without compromising core values, plus fundraising, present your value proposition to investors with clarity, conviction, while negotiating terms that work for you. So I'm the only founder, but trusts me, but he is much more experienced because he's much older and he was a GM in a Fortune 500 company before. So even though he says, I follow you with your vision, I'm sometimes intimidated and think when he gives a comment, like, am I too bold? Should I step back and play safe here? But this is actually not the reason I founded it. So yeah, this staying confident and saying we reach the vision without compromising my core values while navigating disagreements, that is on my mind today. And I would like to hear from your experience. Yeah, what might lie ahead of me and how to deal with that at that moment.
Well, thanks, Christian. Hey, Alex, I think we have our next webinar topic, conflict resolution.
Oh man,
Yeah.
yeah, all aspects of life. Yeah, thanks,
Yeah.
Christian. That's really good feedback as well. We'll make sure to touch on that.
Yeah. Tushar, you're up next.
Yeah.
Thank you. Again, thank you, Nikon. And so I'm Tushar Ranjan. You guys can call me Honey. I have attended multiple BSA events. Now I'm back in India. Soon I'll be flying back to Bangkok. 24th April event for that I have already registered. So my background is product and project management. Also, I have done development as well. So why I'm here now? So the reason I'm here is because I have recently started working for a startup. I'm the founder. And I would like to learn about negotiation more and see how it goes for today. What I can take, what can be the take.
Cool. Appreciate it. I'm going to read some more from the chat, Alex. Lizette said, my name is Lizette. I want to be able to negotiate on how to collaborate for my home-based perfumery. Thank you. Igor says, I'm jumping headfirst on selling my idea for a product, either to investors or prospects. Have been an engineer since forever. Sounds familiar, so I need to learn how to negotiate better. Mink said, first-time entrepreneur, want to know how to talk and convince my team, co-founders in hard situations that might come up. David shared, negotiations is in every part of life, salaries, personal relationships, where you'll grab dinner with friends, knowing how to come to agreement that works, requires soft skills I don't have yet. Fair. Yes, I'd love to learn conflict resolution. Thank you. Okay. Job skills, BD, negotiation is a must. Beauty said, I believe in learning more about art of negotiation and also to impress with the time I used in Bangkok Startup Association. All right. I think we have enough, Alex. What do you think? We have enough to get started?
No, This is great. Thank you everybody for being so open. And
Yeah.
it's honestly, it's one of the first things when it comes to a good negotiation is that you're aware of what it is that you want.
Yeah.
So if you're not, you will end up getting something different, right? So
Yeah.
I think let's rock into this, Nikon, because I think there's so many ways we can
Okay.
take this.
So the way it's going to work now, everyone, is so Alex and I are going to have a conversation. You guys get to listen, and as we're talking, I want you to, write down questions or, raise your digital hand, and that will come later in the Q&A. And the Q&A will be actually the real part of our learning because that's where we're going to learn from each other in our collaborative teaching style. So Alex, I'm going to kick it off.
Sure.
Just so we get out on the same page, like what is negotiation to you? Like how do you what's your definition?
I mean, if very inspired by the chat and the questions, right? And I think my definition for negotiation is quite straightforward. It's being able to ask for what it is that you want.
Mm.
And the process of that is obviously never as simple, and often it's never the exact thing, but it's the progress of asking. So I'll leave it there, and then we can open up
Okay.
what that means, right?
For me, that's definitely a key part of it is asking, because without asking for something, you don't have a negotiation. For me, that I've been using the definition that's looked true to me is that it's the fine tuning the agreement where both parties are happy with. Now let's speak a little bit to that because before I think I watched too many Hollywood movies when I was young and I thought negotiation was about me winning and the other person is losing. And then I've been on the losing side of negotiations and I remembered one thing. Oh, I lost this negotiation and I never want to do business with this person ever again. Like screw
Yeah.
this person. If they're in it so that I lose and they win, like I don't want to do business with them. I'm not going to recommend them. And that really changed the game for me because I realized, oh, I want to play negotiation where we're fine tuning this agreement we have so that we both win. Because whichever side you're on that equation, you still want to keep doing business. Because to me, business is a village and it's a very small village. And if you're,
So
yeah, go for it.
So I'm gonna rebuttal that, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
from my experience,
yeah,
this is a beautiful story we can tell ourselves
yeah.
that there is enough of the pie. The unfortunate reality, right? And this particularly will become more evident if it is that you exist as a founder
Mm,
or if you are in some kind of deal making. The vast majority of individuals will treat negotiation as a winning and losing game, right? So I've met some amazing, especially when you come into finance. Finance has a whole field of negotiations that's fine-tuned towards winning, right? Winning is the ultimate purpose. But I'm not saying what you're saying is wrong. You just have to imagine that the far vast majority of the best negotiators up there are winning because other people are losing. And that's why we also have a great inequality in several different systems. Um, to give you a bit of how do you say uh, meat on the bone here, because it's changing. I truly believe that the vast majority in negotiations, if you keep winning and the other person loses, you're playing a finite game, right? And I got to learn this the hard way when it came to co-founders in my past startup, because there's different dimensions the co-founder negotiation happens, right? One is on what I call crystallized power. And crystallized power is if you're negotiating with your co-founder, but your co-founder has 50% of the company and you have 10. That crystallized power is there's just a different power dimension, because most often they would have the ability to overthrow you. Guys, this is the same for investors. So if an investor evidently has more power in equity or the pie than you, they can overthrow you regardless of the negotiation. So you're really negotiating on what I call soft power instead, right? So crystallized power is the equity. Soft power is what you're talking about. It's the willingness for me to I'm eager, even though I have more equity than you, I have more crystallized power than you. I'm willing to find a way that we can work together because you obviously has a lot of value to the company. And that takes a bit of empathy to understand that dimension, because some people are just so eager to win that I don't really care, right? I just want to get to the next deal and the next deal after that. Do you get what I mean when I make that distinction?
Yeah, I wonder, Alex, if you have any stories that reflect what you were sharing.
I'm happy you asked, right? So I think one of the best stories I've gotten was we had a case with a legal dispute. US, I had a startup in the Philippines, and there was a legal dispute where we were pushed into a corner, and wherein the only option seemed to kind of give up, right? So the lose scenario for us was quite evident. But it actually didn't really matter if we lost the case. The case was mostly a pride case. And I think a lot of these battles comes down to ego, right? That we kind of bind ourselves to the willingness to win because we have to win, rather than kind of look at the greater outcome. What I was unable to do at that point with my co-founder was to see this case as a much smaller battle worth losing in the grander scheme of things, right? And many times when you go into this was black and white, this was a legal dispute, either you pay or you pursue the case and you pay a lot of more money for it. So this was for us just saying, okay, we'll leave the case, we'll give up, we'll pay the fine, whatever. And obviously that required us to agree that this is not about winning this battle. This is about making sure that we can continue to play the game. Empathy and the negotiation style when it comes to co-founder is quite critical to have established before you go into the open market, right? Because once you go into the open market and you deal with like third party, if it's lawyers, or if it's bankers or whatever, if it's investors, and you don't have that open-hearted conversation with your co-founder, you are going to have conflicts like these. And that can be a little difficult. So to add on to the next topic, perhaps, Nikon, and I think the audience will enjoy this. I say negotiation is about asking. Ask what I want so I can get my way. But it's not the first thing you start with. You start with understanding what the other person is asking for, right? So if for those of you out there who's read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, right, a great management book that has timeless value, habit number 5 is seek first to understand, then to be understood. And having this perception on negotiation as a manner of saying, what is it actually the other person is asking for? And do I have the ability to articulate that for them? You get what I'm getting at? Because if I know what you want, I can see if we can play this game together.
Actually, that to add on to that, Alex, I would say, in my experience, probably 60 to 80% of your negotiating is getting clear on what everybody wants.
Yes.
Because not everybody wants what they say they want. I'll say that again. Not everybody wants what they say they want. The thing they tell you they want might not be the thing they actually want. And one thing that's really helped me is simply asking them, is that what you actually want? And so for me, a big thing in negotiating is, and to echo what Alex said, is what are the pieces on the table? So the difference between selling and negotiating is negotiating has 2 to 3 variables, or at least more, a complex set of variables. Selling is yes or no, price, right? I want this, I want that, selling yes or no. But negotiating, there are more variables at play. So I'll give you a story that relates to high stakes conflict, which a few of you have asked for. So let me set the stage. I've been asked to host a 2-day offsite for a very fast growing tech company in Bangkok. And for context, this was a rush job. So I got asked to do it on Wednesday. I asked them like, cool, great. Let's plan it. We'll have all these meetings with your team. When are you hosting this event? They're like, Tuesday. And I'm like, I'm looking at my calendar. Oh, it's Wednesday. So like, which month Tuesday? Like next Tuesday. And there was this quiet silence. I'm like, I'm going to ask for more money. And they said, yeah, sure, whatever, rush job. So I get there. And it's one of those situations where, like, because I messed up, right? I didn't ask them what they really wanted. So the content of this offsite is changing every hour on the hour. I'm getting a text message at like 11 p.m., 1 a.m. like, hey, can we add this? Can we take out this? And I'm like, what the fuck? And then, but I'm there, right? Because I already took the money. So like, I got to show up. So we show up and it's 40 people, like their top 40 people of this fast growing tech company. And we start to do the offsite, we go through the content, and about 10 a.m. on the first day, I'll never forget it. The head of sales, like their head of sales for the whole company, gets up, he stands up and he says, this is bullshit. in front of everybody. And I'm sitting there and he like goes on this, like all these reasons why this is bullshit and why the company's going the wrong direction. And like, we should be doing this, that. And I'm like sitting there watching him. And I remember I looked at the CEO, like on my left, I'm like, are you going to do something about this? And he looks at me like, what are you going to do about this? And I'm like, okay, I'm on my own. Right. That's like the look Tashar gave. That was my look. I'm like, bro, like you're the CEO. Like, okay. So now what are the variables at play? There's power, right? Who has the power in the room? Attention, who has the attention in the room? And the third one, I would say it's leadership, right? So power, attention, there are a lot of complex variables on the table here that are being negotiated. And I knew that I just intuitively knew that if I bumped heads with this guy, I would lose. It's not my company, not my people. I've been hired as like the speaker. So what did I do? I let him speak. I gave that variable to him. You can have the attention. I'll wait. And he talked for about 5 minutes and then he sat down. And then I got the variable back. I got the power back because no one was competing with it. Like, you can have it for the next 5 minutes. And then throughout the day, this guy just keeps interrupting me and keep having outbursts. And then it gets to a point where somebody in the room asked me, like, how do you deal with difficult people? So I said, I'll show you. So I turned to this guy and I said, I'd like to ask your permission for you not to like me for the next 10 seconds. I'll say it again. I had the microphone. I was like, I'd like your permission for you not to like me for the next 10 seconds. And I wait for an answer. And he's like confused. He was like, the fuck did he just ask me? You know, he's like, okay. And I said, it seems to me that you're really good at your job and you really care about everybody here and the direction of this company. I need you to let me do my job so I can help everybody get to where you want to go. And I said it in that tone. I was like, can you do that for me? And he was like stunned. He was like, yeah, I guess. Like, okay. I'm like, cool. Silence. I got the power back because we negotiated that because it was the way I asked. Like Alex said, because I wanted the power back. So I'm just going to ask for it. Like, you need to stop being a dick so I can teach this so I can do my job. And the rest of the day goes smooth, and people are like, how did you do that? Like, that's the toughest guy in the company. That's amazing. And at the end of the day, they invited everybody to dinner. And this guy's like, oh, okay, I don't know why I went to that dinner, but I went. And that guy, he sits next to me at the dinner, and I'm like, ah, shit. And he says to me, like, where'd you go to school? And I'm like, Washington, D.C. And he's like, Washington, D.C.? Like, where'd you live in Washington, D.C.? I was like, Potomac Avenue. And he's like, Potomac Avenue? Do you know like the supermarket at that corner? And I'm like, why? He's like, I used to hang out there. I think I worked at that supermarket. I was like, oh shit, that was you. And then instantly, like instant best friends. And I was thinking, wow, I'm so happy my approach to that very complex, invisible negotiation was calm and clear. And to me, not being invested emotionally in negotiations really helped me do that. Knowing that my emotions has nothing to do, like whatever he was saying, nothing to do with me, being able to show up calm and clear helped me to see all the variables at play. And I knew if I had gotten emotional in that exchange, I would have lost the deal, I would have lost my credibility, and I would have lost the client. And since then, now we're good friends, and that's led to a lot of business. Yeah.
So a few observations on this, right? And this leads to the room as well. When you receive information that is unknown, but you're looking for that ask from the other person, it's I applaud your bravery and your courage, Nikon, but it can often be quite intimidating depending on power levels, right?
Yeah.
That's why open language is usually a way of deducting more information. For example, guy is angry at the case, right? Oh, it sounds like this is upsetting to you. It seems like there is something in the way we're carrying this forth that doesn't resonate with your goals. It looks like the way that we are presenting ourselves and our company in this opportunity is misaligned with the outcomes that you were considering. You're not telling him what he says. You are offering yourself as a soundboard. Looks like, seems like, sounds like, right? All these positions allow you to collect more information and mirror back whatever it is this person is trying to express. Because there's definitely emotion in a negotiation room. I usually say the calmest person in the room wins, because you have the ability to take a step back and start collecting information. The second part of this, Nikon, and I'm curious to hear you. Are you familiar with BATNA? BATNA?
Not at all.
BATNA was something I learned from my old lawyer. It's called the best alternative to a negotiated agreement.
Yeah.
BATNA is what you walk away on. And this seems to be a yes agreement, but I'll tell you, out of all the negotiations I've had in my life, it's not about winning or losing them. It's actually the ones that didn't happen. Because many of them, there's sometimes just no deal. I'm thinking about Thursday, and you know, he's negotiating a contract. Oh yeah, you know what? I'll pay you $10 an hour. Doesn't matter how much you want to negotiate on that, right? That price needs to go up. So I'm just gonna say, listen, I'm afraid that my value is not equal to the amount that your budget offers, right? And that allows you to set a value on yourself, right? Especially for those out there who are looking for price setting, or doing project sales, or selling hours. You gotta actually sell yourself a lot higher than what it is that you want to settle with, because you can't really negotiate up once you've set your price line.
Right. That's a good, yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
if I'm, you know, $250 an hour, most people will get a $350 price and then a discount, right?
So
Because
the
the trick about the human mind is we always deduct loss is much more impactful than gains, right? And it works the same way when it comes to taking a price down. People are impacted the same way. Go ahead, Nico.
Now, to what you're saying is also some like, I want to call them rules, but like good ideas that seem to me in negotiation, which is in my world they call it the essential position. What is your walk up? What is the minimum you're willing to accept? And if it goes below the minimum, you walk away. A lot of people, like clients, they come to me and like coaching them in business and negotiating comes up. I always ask them, are you willing to walk away from this? And if it's a no, I know they're in a bad position. Right. And have a really clear essential position. What is the lowest amount I'm willing to go? And if you're willing to go lower, it's not your real lowest position. And like what Alex said, you always ask for your best outcome, because you know you can negotiate down. But if you start low, like you're already at rock bottom.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you, like,
Sorry, if the person shakes their head on your, you know, your high offer, ask them about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Does this seem reasonable to you? Right? Don't necessarily take the first offer you put out there as being the final, right? There's always a negotiation that starts afterwards.
Yeah.
But I think it might be helpful for people just to have a bit of structure on, you know, the different sets of the negotiation, right? Because I at least, you know, depending if it's your salary, if it's the co-founder conflict, I think a universal model is keep three things in mind. Your ask needs to be thought through, right? Best case scenario, usually called, right? Your walk away scenario needs to be thought through as well. And then your model for deduction. Your model for deduction is how do you end up either at top or somewhere in between, or walk away, right? The negotiation scenario, once you go into it, sure, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Be kind, but direct. Be kind, but direct. I think if you're brute forcing negotiation, most people, unless you really have a, you know, a tendency to be aggressive, most people will find themselves doing something that they can't recognize, right? And you end up saying things you don't believe in, asking things that you don't want. And I think the balance is actually in between. So finding out that you're asking for something and you feel anxious about that because it might be a higher number than you expected. But that's not where you know, negotiation starts. Negotiation starts once it is that you ask them, what is it that you would like out of this outcome, right? And that practice takes time and often gets heated emotionally. So that's where, don't be afraid if silence incurs in negotiation. For those of you out there who meditate, get comfortable in the silence.
You know, there's a story about that when I was in business school, like how culture comes into that. So it was, a lot of you might know that case study. When Americans were first doing business with Japanese people, because Americans are always in a rush. I don't know if you heard that story. They're always in a rush and they want things quickly. And the Japanese, they would just be met with silence and like long delays because Japanese styles of negotiating is very slow. And the Americans, when they didn't know what was happening, they would cave in first. Like, okay, we'll meet your demands. And the Japanese would be like, this is great. All we have to do is just shut up. And the Americans will give us what we want.
Yeah.
Right. So what I want to do now is for the next 30 minutes, me and Alex work for you. We are your coaches, your advisors, your counsel. Bring us your questions or case studies, and we'll do our best to help you. And this is where our collaborative teaching comes in. So first question, Wendy asked, how do you know what the other person wants? You ask them what they want. And then you ask them if that's what they actually want. That seems to work well for me.
Yeah, but don't be direct in the request necessarily, right? Because you want them to agree. A good negotiation happens when the other party says yes, 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 because that means you understand them.
Right.
So if Nikon is trying to sell me a great conference, I would say based on his pitch, it sounds like you're looking for a partner that can help you facilitate this conference. And then Nikon would say yes, or he would say no, actually no, I'm looking for an investor for my conference. Okay,
yeah, good
right.
to know.
Okay,
Context.
so
Yeah.
my understanding of your
yeah.
perception is wrong, right? So I have to go back again. Oh, okay.
Right.
But it seems like you were asking about this because you were looking for speakers, right? So make sure you understand the other person when the other person says yes, yes, yes. But
Right.
that usually doesn't happen because you say, so what you want is. No, it seems like what you want is. It sounds like what you want is. It looks like what you want is, because then you have a rapport established between you two individuals, right? They trust that you know what they want, and then you can say what you want.
Fair. All right, we're going to go to Tushar. You're up.
Thank you, Nikon. And from what I understood as of now, until now, we have discussed, first, basically communicate what you want exactly openly. It should be clear, as less ambiguous as possible. Like Alexander just mentioned, like it has to be clear. And what I also understood, do you mean like asking powerful questions to the person you are negotiating with, so they give you the clear answer? Okay, what exactly you're looking for? Like you ask, is that what exactly what you want? Is that what exactly you need? That's a powerful question. You bring them on board. Like you can be open with me.
Yeah.
So am I understanding it correctly?
Yeah, so there is a line of questions called open-ended calibrated questions. So open-ended calibrated questions are very good if it is that you're trying to find balance or match points between what is currently being asked from the other party and what it is that you want, right? So say you're selling I'm investing in your startup, Tushar, right? And I'm trying to find out whether or not your valuation makes sense for the ticket size that I'm in, right? So I'm trying to find out if I can put the amount of money that I have available into your company. I would say, how do you see invested capital result in equity for investors, right? Where my question actually is, what do I get equity for my capital, right? But in what way would a investment of a certain size give a single-digit equity portion, right? So I'm not asking directly, hey, how much do I get for $1 million? Because then I have disclosed that I'm willing to invest $1 million, and that might not be something I'm willing to disclose to you. I'm trying to find out what is your thinking around the capital that I have available, which is a certain size that I'm not willing to disclose now. But I want to find out how you think about invested capital so I can see if it even makes sense for me to pursue it further.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
What I usually ask them is, what do you mean by? And for me, it's context is king. And we're like, in Bangkok, I have a mastermind and people will share something like before we get into problem solving. I'll ask them like, what do you mean by goals? Like, what do you mean by fundraising? And I found, like you said, what we think they think we're like 99% wrong until we ask them like getting context. What do you mean?
Yeah.
And I tell you, and it's really helpful because I used to think that people knew what they wanted. and I was wrong. And so before we move on, was that helpful, Tushar? Did we get it? Oh, you're muted.
I can't
I
hear you.
have another question.
Sure, go
Okay,
for it.
so
Go ahead.
okay, so let's say like I don't clearly. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a noise around?
No?
Okay,
Okay.
I want to ask you that. Let's say we are trying to get the clear thing out of the other part, like okay, what they exactly are looking for. But no matter how open we are trying to ask, they are hesitant. What can we do about it? Like they're hesitant to make their intention clear, what
So
they are looking
I let me get this. I would just call it out. I'd be like, it seems to me, using Alex, it seems to me like there's some, like I would call it out, the elephant in the room. It seems to me there's some weird energy here. Like, what's that about? Because like I generally want to know. Like, what's that about? Like why? Because if we're both, remember, because negotiation is we both want to get something out of it. But if you're hesitant to get something out of it, then what's that about? Like, let's get that out the way. Yeah.
You can also do, I call it tighten the screw, right? So you could make it clear that in your process you can't proceed until you have more from their process, right? So
Yeah.
so you would say that it for us, I appreciate the process so far in our collaboration, but for us to move forward in a valuable manner for both of us, we really require XYZ information, right?
Yeah.
Because it's we don't want to waste your time, right? And for us to offer a meaningful conversation or product going forward, we need access to this. Is this possible, right? Or is there something keeping us from moving forward? It's usually, and you also find out, then it's an NDA or there's some bureaucracy on their side. I was always someone behind. It's like, let's give them another day. And if you poke them behind that, it's also a good way. The second thing is question, are you speaking with the right decision maker? Right? Because if you're not speaking with the right decision maker, you can ask for that. And that's usually a hold up point, especially when it comes to corporate sales. You're trying to sell a product to someone, but you're speaking with the wrong decision maker. And that's also an ask, right? It's like, would you be the right person to make a decision on this, right? Or who else in the room would be valuable for us to consult in order to reach an agreement on this? Because you quickly find out how to make a stakeholder map. When I did consulting sales, I would draw an organizational chart. So I could find out this person I speak to, who they reporting to, where they connected, just to give myself an idea of where it is I actually need to move in the organization. So that's just a little tool that I used to play with.
Oh, that makes sense to me. Very helpful. Thank you.
All right, cool. All right, I'm gonna go to some questions in the chat, and then if anybody else wants to raise their hand, can raise their hand. So Igor asked how to keep your emotions in check during negotiation and an interesting technique. So I'll share my thing. What's really helped me is remembering that it's all a game. It's all a game. The more we put on in our thinking, like what's at stake? Oh my God, if I get this negotiation, if I don't, like if I get it, oh my God, my life's gonna change. If I don't, my life's over. Like the more you build it up in your head, the more tense it's gonna feel. Like you want to be like clear, calm and clear and just nothing on it. What I mean by nothing on it is there's no pressure on it, whether you get it or you don't. There's nothing on it, because the more calm and clear you can come, like Alex said, you see better. Because the more pressure you have on it, the more fuzzy your view gets, the more fuzzy your hearing gets. You don't really hear what's being said. You don't really see the pieces on the map. And so for me, it's just knowing it's a game. It's a conversation. That's it. The more you make out of it, the harder it will be to be calm, because we live in the feeling of our thinking, not our circumstances. So it's like saying, if you're negotiating between a deal that's worth 1,000 baht and a deal versus 100 million baht, 100 million baht should feel more tense. But if you talk to the guy who does that every day for lunch, like it just feels like another Tuesday. And then you go ahead, Ash.
I think just 2 points on this. The ability to manage emotions under any circumstance is a lifelong skill, right? So I burned out more or less at my last startup because of these high intensity emotional happenings, right? And And I actually have a exact story about this. I came home one night quite late to my wife, and she asked, what's going on? And I said, I can't outsmart these guys. Like these negotiations, these conflicts are just too intense. I can't outsmart them, right? They're too good. And she told me, you don't need to outsmart these people. You need to outcalm them. You actually, your main responsibility is to be the calmest person in the room. How do I do that? That question is a billion-dollar question, not for you as a business, but for you living a thriving life. There's many different techniques in this practice, right? For me, the way I calm myself down in a moment, and this has gone back long before, business. This, we've always been anxious in moments. And in order to move from, fight and flight back to rest and digest, just take a distance to the situation. You need to disassociate with the emotion that you're feeling, because you're the one convincing yourself that you're anxious. The difference between anxiety and excitement is only our own perception from it, right? So when I feel anxious in a negotiation, it's like, wow, I'm excited, right? My body reacts in a way where, I'm breathing, I'm present, I wanna, move forward with this, but I shouldn't let myself fall down. I should actually lift myself up. I do a number of different practices. One of them, as I sit at a meeting and my emotions go up, I do pressure points, right? So this right here is a fantastic little nerve. You have a pressure point that you can squeeze. If you squeeze it, you'll feel at one point, it hurts a little bit, but it grounds you. It grounds you, it disassociates you from the emotion. You can also do box breathing that can be done completely concealed in a conversation with someone. 4 seconds breathing in, hold 2 seconds, breathe out 4 seconds, hold 2 seconds. Regulate your breathing, right? Make sure that you realize that your body is moving into this, fight and flight. It's very anxious. Regulate your breathing. Do a few tricks, ground yourself, place both feet on the ground. This is all good practice in any scenario, guys. Like so that's at least for me. And I can tell you, I've dealt a lot with anxiety in this field, so I'm still learning.
Thanks, Alex. Before we go to more questions, I just want to make sure, are we going in the right direction? Is this helpful to all of you? Like thumbs up if it is. Like, is this helpful and a good use of your time? Right? Okay, we'll keep doing it. Thanks, guys. Because we want to check in if the content is of use to you, because that's the most important thing here, is this valuable? Is this being helpful to you? So I'm going to go to more questions in the chat. So how do you manage? So Mario asks, how do you manage cultural difference? For example, being direct. I am direct and I try to be very clear, but my Thai colleagues are indirect and unclear. So getting projects going takes a lot of time or being placed on indefinite hold. So for me, that's not necessarily a negotiation question, and maybe more for like, how do you handle multicultural situations, which we have a great speaker lined up for a future webinar, but this is what I will say to that.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not, Alex, I'm negotiating my part.
so,
It's my turn. You need to wait your turn, sir. You need to wait your turn.
Go ahead.
See, that's how you negotiate getting your spot to speak. You just ask for it. You need to wait your turn. See?
You're getting emotional?
Absolutely not. I'm doing my pressure point thing you just said.
Good.
I would say, again, going back to understanding, because no matter what culture you're from, everybody wants something. Right? I'll say it again. No matter what culture you are from, everybody wants something. And it's how willing are you to go? How willing are you to understand what they actually want? And maybe in that sense, maybe it might be the way Thai people want to do things, or Japanese or Chinese people, but are you willing to understand them? And I found 10 out of 10 times, if you're so sure on doing it your way, you're probably wrong. But it has to be done my way, and it's the only way I'm willing to do it. Like if that your minimum is so high, you're gonna have a really hard time in life, because everybody is different, especially in this part of the world. Unless you're talking to a room full of just clones, we're like, yes, we all understand what your life is like, so we all have separate realities. So that's what I would say to that. Do you want me to go to the next question, Alex? Because it is kind of a multicultural question.
Go ahead.
How do you present yourself for the negotiation when you are in desperate situation to not let go of the current opportunity? Oh, I'm gonna let Alex have that one. That's so juicy.
I mean, it sounds like
You've already.
It sounds like you've already made up your mind, my friend.
Yeah.
Current switching opportunities, I don't know how good the opportunity is you're going for now is where I'm curious, right? Because you're switching cost and going into a negotiation for something new. You want to have leverage, right? A very important thing in asking for something is that you have something direct to offer, right? So the leverage position is quite important. No one will give you what you ask for if there isn't something substantial in return, right? So, and that substantial part is, I don't know what this opportunity you're currently with is, but that's always a tricky thing, right? Because if we keep jumping to the next thing, we might lose leverage, right? And if you lose leverage, you'll end up having less and less to bargain for. A big thing in negotiation for jobs, for example, if it is that you have a career that's very, very different, you've done so many things all the time, is I'm negotiating your salary, but I'm not really seeing loyalty in your background, right? So what is it actually I'm buying into? I'm buying into a talent, for sure, but are you going to stay with me? Because where you come from doesn't really express that. So that would be my perspective as if it was for a hiring position at least.
Also, this comes up for me. I think it came from one of my mentors, Michael Neal, and he said, like, let's say in a sales situation, like you might need the money, but you never need it from them. I'll say it again. You might need the money, but you never need it from them. Meaning, if like you might need the thing that you're desperate to get, but it doesn't have to be them. I can't tell you how many times that I've let go of things just to have the next best thing show up. Like any of you guys ever had that? Like one door closes and like three doors open. It's like that. But if you find yourself like hanging on, like the more tightly you find yourself hanging on, it's probably a sign to let go.
Yeah. I mean, I want to share that when I left my corporate job for my startup, I probably left my corporate job a little too fast. And I walked away from a lot of money to go into no money. So, the idea of opportunity is also timing, right? It's like if you want to buy real estate in Bangkok, now is a good time because of the earthquake, right? So it really depends. It really depends on the opportunity field that you exist in. If you are successful in your position and you want to change jobs, make sure that success is something that rides with you into the next position as well, right? Don't burn bridges. Make sure that there's a nice resume, reference, whatever. So we can also be too quick in these things.
Well, I'm going to add on to Samantha's question real quick because it relates to what you just said. If you had to do again, what would you have had in place before leaving your corporate job?
um, oh man, many things.
That's a whole nother webinar, Samantha.
Yeah, it's not really a negotiation thing, but it's a leverage thing, I think. When you leave something in general and you want to take that thing you leave as leverage for anything else in your life, make sure you do that on good grounds, right? Because essentially, if you go from one opportunity that you've negotiated hard to be in, and now there's another thing you go to, all that power you put into that is still left there, right? And in hindsight, I would probably have negotiated an advisory contract, right? I would probably have been more associated to my corporate job over the next many years because startup life is tough, right? I didn't know that. I was an ignorant founder, but there was many months where salary was minimum and I could really have used kind of just a different cash flow. So I was very ignorant towards the opportunity. I was thinking this is an all or nothing. Nothing is rarely things are all or nothing. Sometimes it's 90%, 95, 100% is it's difficult, I'd say.
So thanks for that, Alex. I'm going to go to this question. Another question that's like, what books do you recommend? So I think we could send that out as an email later. So I'm going to jump to the more like negotiation question. So Lewis Blaine, I'm going to say Lewis. Let's say you're not sure of your decision in a face-to-face negotiation. What are your thoughts on telling the other party you need some time to think about it and get back to them in X days? Is that okay, or would it kill the flow of negotiation? I'll go first. if it feels right, sure. And often I'll tell you something interesting. People who are trying to scam you, or a pressure tactic, is try to get you to make a quick decision. And for me, it's a red flag. If anybody tries to pressure me into a decision, like, oh no, but you have to make the deal now. If you don't make the deal now, you lose this, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, done. I'm not working with you. And it's just my personal preference, because I want to work with people who are considerate of me and my time and are willing to give me as much time as I need to make decisions. But if I know someone's pressuring me to make a decision, that's like red flag for me. Like, if anything, that's my sign to walk away if they're not willing to be respectful of that, because I would do that for them. If they needed time to think about stuff, I would give it to them, if anything. Oftentimes in my own coaching contracts, and people are like, yes, I want this. Like, give me your bank account. I'm like, go take a night and think about it. And if tomorrow morning you wake up and you feel like, you know what, I still want to hire you and give you this money, let's talk. And since I've been doing that, I've been getting lots of great reviews. Kids say, wow, nobody does that. Everybody's so quick to take the money and take the deal, but nobody's given me the time and space to really think about things. Because a pressure tactic in negotiation is to get you in a heightened emotional state and get you to make a quick decision, which to me is just like evil. Like, people who do that, fuck you. Like, but that's my own personal opinion. I'm gonna hand this to Alex.
Nick and I used to do that a little bit, so hope
fuck
you
you,
don't.
Alex.
Yeah, I don't hope yeah, because predatory sales and intensity in sales is also a technique, right? And so the negotiation, the faster it can be done, and often sometimes your incentive is to close deals, right? So it's natural that at one point you will probably meet someone who does that. But I would say it depends, right? It depends on what you're negotiating, right? If what you're negotiating face to face is an option to buy something currently at a spot market price, right? That probably can't wait till tomorrow. So, but that's very rare, right? Unless you're trading or buying, you know, buying crypto, or doing something that requires current market conditions to stay in a certain way. So if you're not in that bucket, it's always an exchange of trust, right? So one of the books I'd recommend is The Speed of Trust, because the negotiation you are working on is an exchange of trust, right? And you measure that on the basis of how much you give and also how much you return, of course. But asking for time, for example, is a very, very open request for trust, right? It's like, do you trust me well enough for us to continue this tomorrow? So I would actually say practice that more often, because you quickly get to see whether or not this other party trusts you enough to say, yeah, you know what, no way, because you're going to run away. And if that's the case, there's a whole other thing you need to sleep on, right? So so I agree on that point.
Okay, cool. I think we have I have two more. I think we have time for two more questions. So for Igor asks, any hints or possible pre-negotiation preparations? How do you get information and formulate a strategy before even meeting the other party? I think it's coming to this webinar, kind of, and I think going over what Alex said in the beginning is knowing what you want, being really clear what you want, having a sense of what they want, being clear on your essential positions. At what point do you walk away? No questions asked. Like, what's your essential position? And I would say the third one is go through in each of your positions what you want. What's the best, expected, and worst? Just in your head, like, this is the best I want to ask for. This is what I kind of expect it to be. This is the worst. So you have a structured idea of no matter what your emotions are, you have something to hold on to. Like, okay, I'm landing at expected. Okay, I've asked for 1 million baht. I've landed at 800,000. I'll take it. Like, oh, 200,000 baht. I'm sorry, I can't do this. Like Alex said, this is no longer value for me. No worries. Bye. Don't want to waste your time. Yeah. Last one. Billy asks, any closing strategies? That's like a sales question, right? Do you think? What do you think?
I mean, yeah, it's also seeing if you're aligned, right? So I would come back to labeling, right? So label the situation. It sounds like based on what you've shared with me, it sounds like we have a option for a great deal here, a great collaboration, right? Essentially, it's putting the yes in their mouth, right? So and you want that to be as open as possible, so they can rebuttal and say, you know what, we aren't aligned because your timeline is off, right? It's like,
Mm.
okay, let's adjust that.
Yeah.
So I'm all up for never asking to close it directly unless it's absolutely certain that I can close it and let the yes fall upon the other party.
Yeah.
So sounds like we
So-
can play together.
This is like my own personal opinion. I don't like the word close. I like the word open. I want to think of it as opening a relationship, because that's another thing too,
I
is
like
like
that.
long, like I want to open relationships where I'm working them with a long time, and like it's an ongoing relationship of negotiation and growing where like they make more money, I make more money, and it's an opening relationship. So we're at time here. I'd just love if you can raise your hand, share like what are your takeaways, or you can write into the chat what was something that was insightful for you or helpful for you, and we'll go from there. Do you have anything before we do that? Do you have anything profound you want to say, Alex, before we leave them?
Yeah, quick comment to Christian, because I think the whole co-founder conflict is a topic I'd like to take up on a separate occasion, because I think there's
Okay.
different dynamics that goes into one-on-one that has, the ask is not clear. It's more about building rapport and aligning relationships. So I'll be happy to go into depth with that more. I think co-founder therapy is very healthy. Yeah.
So Kristen, do you want to open your camera and your mic to share what you've learned? Are you comfortable with that? Oh, hey, Kristen, there you are.
Yes.
All right, what'd you get from today's
Thank you so far. Thank you so far from all your learnings. It was very insightful and made me confirm I nodded a lot along the way. I just had briefly a memory popping up while you were saying the last sentence it's about relationship building. I just share briefly that part. What made click for me some years ago was, if I'm addressing this relationship with the idea that this relationship gonna last for the rest of my life, then I'm actually not in a needy position to get the value out of the moment. So in that moment, I say, hey, we can potentially work together right now, but if not, we have decades ahead of us where sooner or later there might be value. It makes me much more relaxed, and that I actually learned to build quite some good relationships. Just as a brief input.
That's really
Thanks for hearing,
cool.
man.
I love that. I didn't see it that way too, but that's what I talked about in collaborative teaching, because now I've learned something, right? Isn't that cool, Alex? I think of it as the long term. Like I have the rest of my life to get to know this person and get to know their needs and wants. That takes all the pressure off, and that's what you want.
Sounds like a marriage.
I'll just read some stuff out. What I learned, David Lockheed says, what I learned is understanding what the other side wants is critical, and you may need to put some effort in finding out that answer. Samantha said, fantastic session, learned a lot, and look forward to checking out the book recommended about trust. Cool. Wendy says, biggest takeaway, knowing what you want and make sure you know what the other wants. This is great. I'd say we'd have to do this again, Alex. What do you think? Right? What do you guys think? We do this again on
Let's ask people.
topics?
Was this helpful? Would you like to see more sessions? We are open to topics as well and different speakers, of course.
Definitely, I would like to join
this is
more
cool.
of these sessions.
And I love that you joined from India. That showed us a lot.
Yeah,
That because
awesome.
Because one of the things in the BSA we're looking at, like, oh, we only do live, like in-person events, but there's so many people who want to join from outside Thailand who are part of the community. So thanks for confirming that. Yeah. Cool. It was great. Well, thanks for tonight. I want you to have a lovely evening, and I think we're good for now. And if you're in town next week, we're going to have an executive dinner, and you'll get that in the communications in the chat or in the emails, an invitation if you're in town and you want to see us in person to have a deeper, like take this a little bit deeper about negotiation and hang out with us in person. We'll do that. But until then, just have a great day. Oh, somebody joined from Norway. That's so wonderful. Thank you. All right, guys. Well, have a great evening, and we'll talk. All right, Tushar, anything?
So you mentioned that the next week we have an executive dinner. So it's separate from the events we regularly have, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a new setup. These are dinners that are limited. Actually, we don't have that many people, but it's on deep topics. It will be on negotiation. So our focus for these webinars and dinners is that we try to combine it with topics that are useful for entrepreneurs and founders and people in the ecosystem. But we'll share more information.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
All right,
No problem.
guys. So have a good evening. All right,
Have a good
bye.
night, everybody. Thank you for joining.
Bye, everyone.